everyone that should be in their villain era. It was this one guy that I talked to, basically dated for like a whole year. He's most definitely a villain in someone else's story now. I feel so bad, and I'm really about to expose my younger self right now, but like, she shouldn't have acted like that if she didn't want to get exposed. This was in high school, and this guy was a senior while I was a sophomore. I had a thing for the older boys, and on top of that, we had the same exact taste in music. I actually was the one to approach him. I had a lot of nerve to be the one to approach him, but then be the one to do him dirty. We started to hang out like all the time. Like, okay, I felt a little weird, I don't know, just like being with him one-on-one, because like I was only 15 and he was gonna turn 18 like pretty shortly, and I think that's why I kind of like sabotaged the relationship. It feels so good to do my makeup with brushes. I was down the beach this whole weekend and I had forgot my whole thing of makeup brushes. I had to use my fingers. I had no problem like hanging out with him in public, like at school and all that, but when we would be like one-on-one, I would feel so weird. I would feel really weird. I would almost like not want to. It wasn't even really like him either. I don't know. It was just like the vibe, or I guess the tension of when it was just the two of us together. When I was 15, I was like emotional as hell, and he kind of like helped that. He was a really good emotional support buddy. And I really liked that, but I think I like confused like feelings with just feeling comforted by someone. Anyway, so we were talking, hanging out pretty much like every single day. Like all of his friends knew about me. My friends knew about him, although they knew that I wasn't like super serious about him, when he and his friends thought the opposite. He was like the first guy I ever really like had a thing with. So it was hard to just kind of like stop talking to him, and also I felt like really bad. He was going through like a super hard time. I didn't want to just like, I wanted to wait till the storm passed. I wanted to wait till things got less bad for him before I left. I know, I was pretty freaking terrible, but that's not even the worst part. He had asked me to be his prom date to his senior prom. I had never been to a prom before. Obviously, I was 15. Obviously, I was really excited. Okay, but I had a friend who was also a senior. She was a girl. I was like, hey, I'm going to senior prom, but like, I don't really want to hang out with him. Can I hang out with you and come to your pictures? I know, it was so mean. He really wanted me to be there for pictures, but like, what am I supposed to tell my parents? Yeah, I'm going to senior prom with a senior boy. So I told my parents that I was going to senior prom with my girlfriend, which wasn't a direct lie, but that also gave me the excuse to kind of like stay with her and basically ditch him. I just feel so bad because the whole day, he was texting me. He was like, hey, like, if you're going to her pictures, is there any way you can come to my pictures? Like, I'm gonna be the only one without a date. And I felt so bad. We got one picture at prom, one picture at the actual venue. Like, I spent no time with him. I didn't even sit with him. He would try to dance with me and like talk to me, and I just like gave him no time of day, would just ditch him for my friends. This was towards the end of the school year, obviously, and like I texted him and I was just like, hey, like, don't really like want to do this. He was super heartbroken. Like, his friends reached out to me and they were like, Maggie, like, he's really not doing well, like all this. And I was like, I know, I just feel so bad. And I know you guys are thinking like, why would you lead it on if you didn't like him? So, like, he would come over, he would bring me food when I would be on my period, and I'd be like, oh, thanks, can you leave? Like, when he would kiss me, I would kind of just like not kiss back. You know what makes me feel the worst about it is the fact that like right before we started talking, like when we were kind of like introducing ourselves to one another, he told me how his ex broke his heart. And I kind of just like did the same thing. I have a boyfriend now of 4 years, so obviously like I'm glad everything worked out the way it did. You know, like I love my boyfriend more than anyone. I'm glad it didn't work out with anyone else, obviously, but like it still makes me feel really bad. Obviously, you know, like I was young and I can't imagine acting like that at this grown age if I were single. I literally have no idea what he's doing with his life now, but I really hope he got his fairy tale ending with someone. Don't be a freaking 15-year-old who's a see you next Tuesday. Bye.
I hate boys so much. Last year, I started talking to this boy, and like everything was perfect, like literally so good. He put in a bunch of effort, and then he started acting weird. Kind of started to ghost me. I hate boys so much. He told me he was leaving me undelivered because he was hanging out with his friends, and I was just like, okay, that's like a valid reason. He ended up going to his school's prom with some of his older friends, and when he got home that night, he started to ignore me. Me being obsessed with him, I was like, what's wrong? Like, why won't you talk to me? Like, all this. He was like, oh, I like saw some people from your school there because we go to different schools. And he was like, and I was talking to them and they told me stuff about you. So I was confused because I don't have beef with anyone from my school. So I was like, oh, they had to have told him good things. I don't know why he's acting upset right now. And I was like, oh, what'd they say? And he was like, oh, they told me you talked to a lot of guys. So I started reassuring him, and I was like, that's not true. I started sending him screenshots of my, like, Snapchat and, like, all this, because obviously I'm not doing that. Funny thing is, he was the one doing that. He started treating me way differently, so about, like, a week later, I unadded him. I was like, I need space to, like, think about this, think about what I want, And a few weeks later, I was like, I really miss him. Like, he was such a good guy, treated me so well. So I added him back again. So I added him back, and he told me that he missed me, and like all this, and like we start talking again, and it's like so good. Like, so good. A few weeks later, this honestly has been going on for like 3 months at this point. He tells me he loves me, and I shared those feelings, so I told him I loved him back. And that was also not good. Me saying that back to him made me like really vulnerable. And then like a week later, he starts acting distant again. So I end up confronting him about it, and he tells me he's going through stuff. And I'm like, how can I help you? Like, I didn't like to see him like that, so I'm like, what can I do to help you? And he's like, honestly, like, I don't know, like, blah, 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 blah. And so I wait for him for weeks, and I just like try and be there for him while it's draining me. Like, it's so mentally draining trying to be there for someone who honestly doesn't really want you to be there for them. And it was so annoying. It got to the point where he was so distant that I just didn't even think we were anything anymore. But I would still text him. I would be there for him. I would never leave him undelivered. Whenever he'd text me, I'd text him back. I ended up going on a church retreat, and I met this girl there from another church. Goes to the same school as him. And she's like, oh, him and I used to talk, and he did the same thing to me. He acted like that, but I found out he was talking to multiple other girls. Buddy, really? She was like, he would tell me the same thing, that he was going through stuff, while really he was just texting other girls. And I was like, there's no way. So I sent a snap of her and I to him, and I said, just heard some things about you, because he did that to me. And do you want to know what he said? He said, I bet you did. Bro, what does that even mean? Like, are you serious right now? And I was like, heard you talk to a lot of girls. And he's like, I'm not gonna lie, I used to do that, but I don't do that anymore. Next day, see, he unnads me. And at this point, I was like, whatever. You know, life goes on. God has a plan for me. If you're not supposed to be in my life, then you're not supposed to be in my life. Then, he adds me back a few weeks later. And I'm like, okay, like, oh my gosh, like, I think he's changed. Like, I could not think badly of this guy. Like, I cared about him that much. Like, so I ended up texting the girl that I met on the church retreat, and I was like, him and I added each other again, like, he seems better, like, he apologized. And she's like, alright, I have to tell you something. She then tells me, when you and him, when he unadded you again, he went and got a girlfriend. That means that he was talking to her while he was talking to me. And he did not change his ways, because why are you going to come apologize to me about all this? Say you've changed, when obviously you haven't. He had told me he loved me 2 weeks before. 2 weeks before he started dating her. Like, buddy, what are you doing? This guy isn't even that cute. He's not that cute. I don't know. I forgive him, obviously. I'm like, he apologized a lot. He's like, I'm so sorry. Like, I just thought you were too good for me, all this bull. And homecoming is coming up. And he was like, are you going with anyone? And I was like, no, are you? And he's like, no. And he's like, oh, maybe we should go together. And I was like, yeah, maybe. Right? And then a few days later, see the ex by his name. So I texted the girl I met on the retreat. I was like, yo, he just unadded me again after, like, trying to go to homecoming with me. And she's like, what? She's like, I saw him at the football game hanging out with this girl the whole time. When he was at the football game, he left me undelivered for 3 hours. It's all adding up. And then, a few days later, she sends me a screenshot of him asking another girl to homecoming. So if you saw my video last night, that's what this was about. So just know, if a guy's acting like that, he's probably being sus, and you shouldn't end it with him.